As soon as Sarah moved into her new apartment, she knew something wasn't quite right. The old building had creaky floorboards, peeling wallpaper, and a strange smell that seemed to follow her wherever she went. But she shrugged it off as a quirk of her new home and tried to make the best of it. That was until one night, when she woke up to a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a scratching sound, coming from inside the wall. At first, she thought it might be a mouse or a rat, but as the scratching got louder and more insistent, she realized it was something much worse. For weeks, Sarah tried to ignore the sound, but it was always there, gnawing away at her nerves. She tried to tell herself it was just her imagination, that she was overreacting. But every time she closed her eyes, she could feel something scratching at the inside of her skull. Then one night, as she lay in bed, she heard a new sound. It was a whisper, faint at first, but growing louder by the second. Sarah strained to make out the words, but they were garbled, incomprehensible. The only thing she could tell was that it was a woman's voice, and it was coming from the same wall that the scratching had been coming from. Sarah was too scared to sleep, too scared to leave her apartment. She felt trapped, like a mouse in a cage, with something scratching at the walls around her. Every night, the whispers grew louder, and the scratching more frantic. Finally, Sarah decided she couldn't take it anymore. She went to the landlord and demanded to know what was behind the wall. At first, he refused to tell her, saying it was just an old building with all sorts of strange noises. But when she threatened to call the police, he relented. What he showed her made her wish she'd never asked. Behind the wall was a small room, barely big enough to stand in. And inside the room was a woman, or what was left of her. Her skin was stretched tight over her bones, and her eyes were sunken in, staring blankly ahead. It was clear that she had been dead for a long time. The landlord told Sarah that the woman had lived in the apartment before her, and had been known for her strange behavior. She had been convinced that someone was scratching at the walls, and had started to scratch back, until she had scratched all the way through to the other side. And then she had crawled inside, never to come out again. Sarah moved out of the apartment that same night, never to return. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the scratching was still there, following her wherever she went. And every time she closed her eyes, she could hear the whispers of the woman trapped in the wall, calling out for help.
It was a dark and stormy night, and Mark was driving home from a long day at work. As he made his way down the winding country road, he noticed something strange in his rearview mirror. There was a woman standing in the middle of the road, waving her arms frantically. Mark slowed down, wondering if she needed help, but as he got closer, he realized something was off about her. Her skin was pale and mottled, and her eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. Mark hit the gas and sped away, thinking it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But when he looked in the rearview mirror again, he saw that the woman was still there, chasing after his car. He could hear her pounding on the trunk, screaming to be let in. Mark tried to ignore her, turning up the radio to drown out the sound. But as he turned onto his street, he realized that the woman had disappeared. He breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he had escaped her clutches. But as he got out of the car and walked up to his front door, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He turned around to see the woman, her eyes blazing with fury, and then everything went black. Alice has always been fascinated by abandoned buildings, so when she heard about the old, decrepit house on the edge of town, she couldn't resist the urge to explore. As she made her way through the overgrown yard and up the rickety stairs, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The house was dark and silent, the air thick with dust and cobwebs, but as Alice began to explore the rooms, she felt a growing sense of dread. There was something not right about this place. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, and the air was filled with an eerie silence. Suddenly, Alice heard a noise from upstairs. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and more insistent with each passing moment. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer and closer. Alice froze. unsure of what to do, but before she could make a move, the door to the room burst open and a figure appeared in the doorway. It was a woman, or at least it looked like a woman, but there was something off about her, something inhuman. The figure stepped forward, reaching out with long, bony fingers. Alice tried to run, but she was frozen in place. She could feel the figure's cold breath on her neck as it whispered in her ear, and then everything went black. One such story is that of the Dyatlov Pass incident, which occurred in 1959 in the Ural Mountains of Russia. A group of experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, set out on a trek into the mountains. When they failed to return on schedule, a search party was sent out to find them. What they discovered was a scene of unimaginable horror. The hikers' tent had been torn open from the inside, and all 9 of them were found dead, scattered around the area in various states of undress. Some had broken bones and other traumatic injuries, but there were no signs of struggle or violence from any external source. The cause of the hikers' deaths remains a mystery to this day, and there are numerous theories and speculations about what may have happened. Some suggest that an avalanche caused the injuries, while others point to more sinister possibilities, such as a Yeti attack or government cover-up. The case continues to fascinate and terrify people to this day, with many considering it to be one of the most inexplicable and haunting mysteries of the 20th century.